everybody, I'm Anna, rhymes with banana. I'm a history lover, but not a historian, and I love this painting. The color palette is gorgeous, and the sense of movement euphoric. I can understand why Lisa Keene found inspiration in this when creating concept art for Tangled, but I was surprised when an homage to the painting made a brief appearance in Frozen, and again in Tangled the series. Why, you may ask? Isn't this just a pretty picture of a girl on a swing? Not exactly. This is actually very salacious, and once you see why, you won't be able to unsee it. Let's start with the star of the show, the lady in pink. When this painting was commissioned in 1767, the outfit of choice for the noble women of France was a robe à la Française, or French-style gown. If we were to deconstruct the dress to the base layer, all you would find is a chemise and a pair of stockings tied at the knee with ribbon garters. Pantaloons would not be worn for another 3 to 4 decades, with bloomers and panties following centuries after that. Meaning the man in the garden is making him... The young man has been taken by surprise, falling back in a bush of pink roses, posed somewhat like Adam in Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. A key difference being that Adam seems more relaxed, his fingers slightly curled back in a representation of free will. The young man in the swing is more energetically twisted, his free will replaced by a fully erect hat, as visions of Maenad dance at his head. Above the Maenads, a figure of Cupid reaches for his arrow, not unlike Elmer Fudd when he's hunting wabbits.
Be very, very quiet.
The young couple is about to be struck by Cupid's arrow. There's a problem, though. A little white dog barks frantically at the young woman, trying to get her attention. Throughout history, dogs have been considered man's most loyal companion, and in paintings, they usually represent marital fidelity. The symbol of marital fidelity being upset definitely indicates that the young man the woman is flashing is not her husband. So who is she married to? Probably the very same man she's left in the dark. Unlike the young man in the bushes, his hat sits limply by his side. Looking at the way he's holding the ropes controlling the swing, I can't help but be reminded of someone trying to rein in a horse. Perhaps this older gentleman is trying to rein in his young wife. Unfortunately, the bonds of marriage are coming undone. Between the young woman and the man in the dark, we can see two puto wrestling a dolphin. This can be interpreted as human desire, the puto, wrestling reason, the dolphin. Even the puto seem uncomfortable with this situation, however. One watches in horror and the other averts their eyes. So this isn't just a painting of a girl on a swing. It's an extramarital affair. Or the beginning of one. After all, the young woman has only just started her descent, swinging back to her husband, the other shoe about to drop. An interesting choice of painting for children's media. And there's more if you look at the historical context. In 1767, an artist named Gabriel François Doyen successfully debuted his painting at the Salon, an art exhibit held every other year by the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. Soon after, a gentleman of the French court summoned Doyen to request a painting of his mistress sitting on a swing being pushed by a bishop, while he would be placed
in such a way that I would be able to see the legs of this lovely girl, and better still if you want to enliven your picture a little more.
Doyen would later tell songwriter Charles Collet,
"This proposition, which I could never have expected given the nature of the painting and the gentleman suggested, confounded and petrified me at first."
He directed the gentleman to a different artist, Jean Honoré Fragonard. Now, Fragonard was no slouch. He started his training as an artist when he was still a child and won the Prix de Rome at age 20. He then spent 5 years in Italy studying painting and perfecting his landscapes. In 1765, he returned to Paris and made his debut at the Salon with his painting Corissus and Callirrhoe. The painting was such a success that it was purchased by the crown, and Fragonard received an invitation to join the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. Being a member of the Academy came with prestige, but it didn't always come with pay. In fact, while the crown had procured Fragonard's painting in 1765, he wouldn't actually get full payment until 1773. In the meantime, he made money by taking on private commissions, and his personal style evolved. When the Salon was held again in 1767, Fragonard submitted The Swarm of Cupids, which was completely different from the grand works the Academy preferred, and was met with such savage criticism that Fragonard would never exhibit his work at the Salon again. Just as Fragonard is stepping away from the Academy, the gentleman of the French court approached him with the commission that had confounded and petrified Doyen. Confounded and petrified. Interesting choice of words, right? It has been suggested that the gentleman of the French court who commissioned the piece was François David Boillier de Saint-Julien, a tax collector for the French clergy. Now, if someone who worked regularly with the clergy approached me with the commission of a clergy member pushing a mistress towards them, I'd be a little confounded too. Being petrified is also understandable when you remember that France was divided into 3 estates: the clergy, the nobility, and everyone else. The clergy and the nobility were allied more often than not because the higher branches of the clergy were nobles themselves. France had several cardinals that served as chief ministers, and usually they were the childhood tutors of the rulers who had appointed them. Louis XV's former tutor, Cardinal de Fleury, was made chief minister in 1726 and was at the helm when the War of Polish Succession kicked off between Stanislaus I and Augustus III. Louis XV's wife, Marie, was the daughter of Stanislaus I, so obviously France backed his claim. After giving birth 10 times in 10 years, Marie was ready to retire from the bedchamber. Louis XV was insatiable, however, and is said to have asked his valet to find him a woman, any woman. When Louis XV started looking for extramarital relations, that opened the doorway for a mistress with different political ideations. Fleury immediately put forth the Queen's Lady-in-Waiting, Louise Julie de Mailly, as she had no strong political affiliations. She served as an official mistress to Louis XV until he moved on to her sisters, Pauline, Diane, and Marianne. Of the 5 Nesle sisters, Hortense is the only one that never became the king's official mistress. All 5 of the sisters were great-granddaughters of Hortense Mancini. It's worth noting that while the man in the shadows may have pushed the young lady forward, she has changed the trajectory of the swing, twisting her body to flash the man below. I also find it interesting that while the ropes controlling the swing are fraying, the velvet cushion remains unblemished. It also bears a striking resemblance to another seat. Actually...
Now, the concept of a bishop or cardinal introducing his ruler to a paramour isn't an isolated incident. Richelieu introduced Louis XIII to the Marquis of Cinq-Mars. Mazarin's niece, Olympe, was a mistress to Louis XIV, and Mazarin's nephew, Philippe, was tasked with introducing the king's younger brother, also named Philippe, to the Italian vice. Dubois then convinced Philippe's son, Philippe II, to marry Louis XIV's illegitimate daughter, Françoise Marie.
In that lens, perhaps the rake tossed aside isn't the sign of an absent-minded gardener, but rather an indication that the man in the shadows ran out of time in setting the scene and dropped the tool in his haste. Similar to how the gardeners of Versailles had to run in front of the king to turn on the fountains before he arrived and then turn them off after he left due to a perpetual water shortage. After the Nesle sisters, Louis XV would have 2 more official mistresses. Unlike previous official mistresses, they were not nobility. The first of these was Jeanne Antoinette Poisson, more popularly known as Madame de Pompadour. She caught the eye of the king in 1744 by deliberately crossing his path during a hunt, and by 1745 she was his official mistress. Pompadour shared the king's love for beautiful things and became a major patron for the arts. In fact, the statue of Cupid in the swing is based on the real-life statue Menacing Love, made in 1757 by Etienne Maurice Falconet for Madame de Pompadour. She's also credited with popularizing the robe à la Francais and a new type of dye from South America that allowed for a brighter and longer-lasting pink. Pompadour loved the color so much that she commissioned a pink porcelain service set, and the chemist Jean Honoré developed the shade Rose Pompadour in her honor. After being the king's official mistress for 5 years, poor health and 3 miscarriages led to an end of their sexual relationship. Pompadour opted to control the transition from lover to closest confidant to the king by commissioning 12 portraits from her favorite painter, François Boucher, beginning in 1750. Luckily, Boucher had an apprentice, Jean Honoré Fragonard. The woman in the painting is probably not Madame de Pompadour, but there are a lot of ties in the painting to her. Perhaps that's supposed to be visual shorthand to indicate that the young woman in pink is going to be a powerful mistress. After all, even after Madame de Pompadour retired from the bedchamber, she still remained an official mistress. The king turned to several petite mistresses housed in his personal harem, the Deer Park. Many nobles of France were libertines. Stories of seduction and promiscuity were rampant. After all, this is the time of dangerous liaisons and the Marquis de Sade, a man whose activities and writings gave rise to the term sadism. While Fragonard was creating pictures like this, he was also creating pictures like this. From our perspective in 2026, it may be difficult to imagine a world where the privileged few are able to tax the majority into near starvation in order to fund their debaucheries. It was a different time back then. 5 years after Madame de Pompadour died from tuberculosis, Louis XV brought in his final mistress and the final great mistress of France, Madame du Barry. Nearly 40 years younger than the king, du Barry has been described as beautiful as a debauched angel and as stupid as a basket. Du Barry grew accustomed to luxury and continuously fell into debt. The king showered her with gifts, and in 1772 he commissioned the largest, most expensive diamond necklace ever made in Europe at the time. In 1771, du Barry commissioned Fragonard to create 4 paintings that showed the progress of love for her new pavilion. He created The Pursuit, The Meeting, The Lover Crowned, and The Love Letters. Like the happy accidents of the swing, these 4 scenes take place in an idyllic, overgrown garden with statues of mythological characters. When looked at together, the statues almost tell their own story. In the first painting, The Pursuit, a young boy rushes forward to present a pink rose, a symbol of first love, to a girl. In the background, we see 2 putti with a dolphin, just like in the swing. Unlike the disturbed putti in the swing, however, these putti are looking straight at the couple with almost passive expressions, indicating that the type of desire wrestling reason is different. In the pursuit, the desire is between a married couple, whereas in the swing, the love is adulterous and shameful. The next painting, The Meeting, shows the same couple, albeit slightly older. The boy climbs a wall to meet his love as she checks behind her to be sure they are alone. Venus, the goddess of love, snatches the quiver of arrows from Cupid, but it's too late. Unlike the swing, this Cupid's quiver is empty, his arrow long fired. In the third painting, The Lover Crowned, Cupid is shown napping happily, his job done. The couple are dressed in theatrical costume, and the woman presents the young man with a crown of roses as an artist paints them. The dress the young woman is wearing actually makes an appearance in Fragonard's other painting series, The Fantasy Figures. The final panel, The Love Letters, shows the young woman sitting on an altar as her paramour lounges against her. They reread their old love letters, the dog of marital fidelity resting comfortably nearby. A statue of a woman holds a heart to her breast as a puto reaches for it, a symbol of friendship. All in all, not a terrible depiction of romance. Unfortunately, Madame du Barry would not accept these paintings, opting to go with works by artist Joseph Marie Vienne in the emerging neoclassical style. I also read a rumor that du Barry may have rejected the paintings because the young couple depicted resembled the young king and Madame du Pompadour too much. The idea of love ending in friendship certainly echoes the story of Louis and Pompadour. Louis XV died from smallpox in 1774, leaving a nation massively in debt and politically weak to his ill-prepared 19-year-old grandson.
Dear God, guide us and protect us. We are too young to reign.
The new queen, Marie Antoinette, was tied to the diamond necklace Louis XV originally commissioned to Madame du Barry and was given the nickname Madame Deficit. The revolution swept through France 22 years after the Lady in Pink took flight, making the swing a snapshot of a moment that was never sustainable. By 1790, Fragonard had gathered his family and the 4 paintings du Barry had rejected to Grasse, where they found refuge with a wealthy cousin. The same cousin purchased the 4 paintings, and when those paintings did not fill the salon being decorated, Fragonard added a series of overdoors and 2 more large panels to the piece. The first of these, Triumph of Love, has 2 putti embracing as jealousy is scorned below. The second, Reverie, shows a young woman languishing at the base of a pillar. A sundial at the top indicates that it is 12 o'clock, or the hour of the shepherd, a time when amorous shepherds and shepherdesses would take a role in the field. Unlike the other paintings, which could take place in spring, these 2 later editions have a more autumnal color palette. Like the sun setting in Fragonard's garden, the frivolities of court life were coming to an end. The reign of terror swept through Paris, and 17,000 people were executed, while as many as 23,000 were killed without trial or died in prison. Most of Fragonard's private patrons, including Madame du Barry, were either guillotined or exiled. The absolute monarchy was abolished, and the taste of the people gravitated towards the images of antiquity they sought to emulate in their new government. Rococo gave way to neoclassicism. The silk robe à la Française, breeches, and powdered wigs gave way to muslin empire gowns, full-length pants, and hair à la Titus. Fragonard would eventually return to Paris, and with the help of his friend Jacques-Louis David, he secured lodgings at the Louvre and worked an administrative position. As Jacques-Louis David predicted, Fragonard devoted his old age to the preservation of the masterpieces whose number in his youth he helped increase, and today the Musée du Louvre is the world's most visited art museum.
Les poissons, how I love les poissons! Les poissons. I love little fishes, don't you?